news here on Halton News. It's Wednesday, November 18th, and I'm Jessica Kading. Taking a look at our current COVID-19 numbers now, 35 new cases have been confirmed in our region since yesterday, and there has been one additional death. When factoring in the recoveries as well, our new total number of active cases in the region is now 560. 14 of the new cases were reported in Burlington, 11 more in Oakville. Milton saw 7 additional positive tests, and 3 more people confirmed positive in Halton Hills. The Ontario Liberal Party has been quite vocal in their criticisms over how the province has handled this COVID-19 situation. Melissa Candelaria was able to connect with Liberal Party leader Stephen Del Duca this morning, who says the province has not had a clear plan from the beginning and that it's caused confusion for residents in Halton and all across Ontario. Here's a portion of the interview where he talks about how the province should have implemented way more testing and how we should balance between safety and the economy and a potential lockdown.
We saw just a couple of days ago, province-wide, we only did 26,000 tests. We should be doing 50, 60, 70, 80,000 tests per day, every day. Every place in the world that's had success dealing with COVID-19 has had a very strong testing and tracing regime. We don't have that in Ontario. I think in places like Halton, Peel, my home region of York, the city of Toronto, which we know are the areas that are struggling just a little bit, we should have more testing capacity in place, perhaps more pop-up testing in place, in particular in neighborhoods or areas of those regions that seem to be struggling the most. And at the same time, I know how hard it's been for small business entrepreneurs who've literally been battered throughout this pandemic. They faced a lockdown back in the spring. They've now seen modified stage 2 or other restrictions. Doug Ford's talked a lot about providing those small businesses with relief, but from every small business owner I've spoken to, it's not at all clear how to access that relief. And so it seems to me that there's a lack of urgency around keeping those small businesses going. So it needs to be both, a lot more testing, a lot more contact tracing, and real relief for those small business owners as they're struggling.
Well, isn't it, it's certainly hard to balance both, because with our current numbers as it stands and the projections that we could be going to 6,000 per day by December, how do we balance, local economy and also keeping people safe when really, should we even be in another lockdown? Our numbers are much higher than they were in the beginning.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's been a challenge, and this goes to the issue around confusion, Doug Ford does talk an awful lot about balance. And look, I'm a liberal, so normally balance is exactly what I love. It's how I approach politics and governing. But what we've seen with this virus is that if you don't get it under control and you ultimately have to face a second across the board lockdown, which is what nobody wants. I don't want it. Nobody I've spoken to wants an across the board second lockdown at this stage. You do have to take decisive action to get the virus under control. It is a public health crisis first. And if you do that successfully, and if Doug Ford had done that decisively and successfully starting in September, we would be in a much stronger position on the economic front. The fact that he's been so confusing for so long, the fact that we learned he ignored the advice from Public Health Ontario, he set the criteria way too high for places like Halton and Peel and York and Toronto and Ottawa, that made no sense based on no scientific or public health advice whatsoever. The fact that he has taken so long and still we are failing on the testing front. The fact that we had to live through the heartbreaking stories coming from long-term care back in the spring, and yet here we are again with more people dying in our nursing homes as we speak because Doug Ford has frankly betrayed them and their families and those who work in those nursing homes. So there is just so much that is being left to be desired by Doug Ford, not decisive enough, not recognizing this is a public health crisis first, and not putting relief in place for small businesses that's easy to access and easy for them to receive on an urgent basis.
So am I correct to assume that if you had the choice, if you had the power, would you put us in a lockdown?
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do a lockdown at this stage. I still think that there are ways to do more targeted features or more targeted approaches that we could be using, but a lot more aggressive and a lot more clarity. And look, here's something else I'm going to say, which I know most politicians won't say, but I'm kind of tired of hearing only from the politicians and not so much from the public health experts. I think one of the best things Doug Ford could do would actually be to take a step back from the cameras. Of course, as a premier, you still want to be providing regular updates. But in addition to Dr. Williams and Dr. Yaffe, let's put some of the other public health scientists and leaders that we have at our disposal, incredible expertise that we have in our ranks here in Ontario. Let's bring them forward. Let's reveal what the command table's advice and public health's advice has been to Doug Ford all the way through. Doug Ford shouldn't be afraid of transparency. I find that the more information you give to people during a crisis, you help them make better informed decisions as they go forward. So too much secrecy, too many lies, too much betrayal, it just doesn't make any sense in it. And the numbers are going in the wrong direction.
To see more of Melissa Candelaria's interview with Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, you can visit our website, yourtv.tv. Yesterday, Dr. Lobo, the Associate Medical Officer of Health here in Halton, explained what changes came into effect this week as Halton entered the red zone of control for COVID-19. And today she dives deeper into the data that was used to place us into this specific category.
So the provincial government is the one that sets criteria for each of these zones, and the criteria were recently revised to change some of the numbers that move health units to these different zones. So some of the criteria they look at are weekly case counts for COVID-19, hospitalization numbers for COVID-19, local transmission rate, number of outbreaks that are happening, what is the public health capacity to do appropriate case management and contact management. So these numbers were different initially when they had released the framework, and now they have revised the numbers. Our numbers and the provincial numbers are available on our website, and we update it daily. So at this time, we meet most of these criteria to be in the red zone. And that is why Halton was automatically moved from yellow to the red zone. So you also have to keep in mind, it is not just one or two numbers, it's a combination of these numbers that are looked at when placing health units in the different zones.
And while the number of cases has continued to climb in Halton, there seems to be a comparatively low number of COVID-19 positive patients in our local hospitals right now. Dr. Lobo explains why there could still be concern about our hospitals becoming overwhelmed.
So you're right. Currently at this time, we have very few people who are COVID positive and are admitted to the hospital. That being said, though, if you look at our numbers for the acute bed occupancy, or if you look at our ICU occupancy rate, both those numbers are in the 85 to 95% range. So if our case numbers were going to rise, then our hospitals are at risk. They cannot continue the services they are currently providing. So if our numbers are going to rise, we have more people who require hospitalization, then something has to stop. So some of the services that would be determined to be non-emergent or non-essential would have to stop, because our hospitals are already at 85 to 90% capacity.
And indeed, at the beginning of the pandemic, some surgeries and services that were deemed non-essential were postponed to ensure that there would be room for COVID-19 patients. Dr. Lobo explains at what point that decision could be made again.
So it would be a joint decision by public health, by health system partners, by the province. And again, it is not just the case counts or not just hospitalization. It is a combination of numbers that we look at, and we are monitoring these numbers on a daily basis. So when we reach a point where we feel, yes, that some of services need to be stopped, we would have to make that decision. But our goal is not to get to that point. Our goal is to stop us from getting to a point where we have to cut essential services in the hospital.
All four of Halton's mayors have joined together with Conservation Halton's Board of Directors to send a joint letter to Premier Doug Ford in response to the proposed changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. Burlington Mayor Marianne Mead-Ward explains the issue at hand.
So there were some proposed changes to the Conservation Authorities Act that were tucked into the budget bill, Schedule 6, and those changes really in many respects gut the authority of conservation authorities. And really, in my mind and the minds of the mayors, all the Halton mayors, 3 of us sit on the Conservation Halton board, that it will take away the ability of conservation authorities to protect human life, to protect property, to manage flooding, to manage watershed issues, and a whole host of other concerns. It will add red tape. It will slow development. It will interfere in our ability to run programs which are actually revenue generating, because there's clauses that would take that away. And then governance issue, getting right down to dictating how long a chair should serve and who it should be, really issues that are so micro when you've got a province to run. Let the conservation authority deal with that. So you get that whole range, but the biggest concern is potential threat to the environment, human life, and health.
We also spoke with Conservation President and CEO Hassan Basit to get his view on the proposed changes.
We are protecting the bare minimum red lines to ensure safety and for our residents. It's simply looking at hazards. It's looking at where the flooding will go. It's looking at how erosion will impact properties. We are not expanding our mandate to include all sorts of other environmental factors, even though they are important. This is 2020. There is no more debate about the impacts of climate change. This province, in spring last year, saw flooding, and the Premier commissioned a report, from a flood advisor. The flood advisor's report came back and talked about the impact that conservation authorities have had, the uniqueness in the province of Ontario of having us. And so to go against those recommendations is frankly mind-boggling. We're focused on our mandate. We're asking for better tools. We're asking for better resources so we can do our job better.
It has also been proposed that sitting board members must be local councillors. Basit explains why that might be a problem.
I think by giving municipalities the independence to decide who they appoint, it allows municipalities to decide what they feel is perhaps an important perspective, perhaps even a skill that they would like represented on a conservation authority board from their municipality. So they may look at their council and say, we're going to appoint 4 councillors. Or they may look at it and say, we really want somebody with an agriculture background because that's important to our community. And we don't have anyone on council who either has those skills or that perspective or is interested in it. Or it may be industry, or it may be research. We have a lot of varied citizen appointees. So again, I think it strengthens governance. It strengthens strategic advice from the board if municipalities are able to make their own decisions as to what skills and what interests they want represented from their communities.
The proposal also includes removing Conservation Halton's ability to give stop work orders, which Basit finds particularly perplexing.
It means that if somebody, anywhere is starting to fill in a wetland, is bringing in hundreds, and this happens, hundreds of truckloads of fill, or dirt basically, to not use jargon, and putting it on their property, and it is reported to the Conservation Authority, we can go in right at the start of those infractions and issue a stop work order. That essentially shuts everything down. So you don't keep degrading the environment. And also for the person who's making the infraction, it allows them to stop at a stage where potentially we can work with them to reverse the damage they've done. We can give them, we call it bringing people into compliance. If you can stop someone, if you've only started building your house and all you've done is dug a hole, and we come there and we say either you've made a mistake or you're willfully ignoring the regulations, you're going to stop now. That is a good tool to have. By taking that away, the only thing we're left with is charging people, which means all we can do is lay charges, go to court, and fight expensive, time-consuming, take the litigious route. And sometimes that is very necessary, and we don't shy away from it. But we feel the province is actually taking away our ability to be able to negotiate, to get people into compliance so they can actually correct the situation and get on with their project or their building rather than tie things up in court for years and years to come. So that again to me is ironic from the government, in that they would like economic prosperity and development. They would like, for people to not be tied up in courts. They would like, as they put it, to kind of check our powers a little bit. But by taking away these tools, it's actually achieving the opposite. It is giving us only a hammer in our toolkit.
While holiday traditions and celebrations may be different this year, there will still be plenty of ways to enjoy and mark the occasion. Up ahead, the details of this year's Light Up the Hills event. Stay with us. You're watching Halton News, and for those of you longing to continue your annual holiday traditions, we have good news. Light Up the Hills will still be on. Jerry Kentner has those details.
Well, Light Up the Hills started in 2008 with a vision I had to have some lighting and hot chocolate at Christmas, holiday time in our community parks. It started then. We're in our 13th season now. This year, and it's been very successful. This year is certainly different with COVID. We are fortunately able to continue having our lights on for the month, December 1st to January 3rd. However, we have had to cancel our December 1st opening event. That's where we have a couple of thousand people. We have a big stage. We have a show. We have dignitaries. We have local residents who are dancing, singing in a band and all that type of thing. And we give away food and drinks, and it's a great festive event to start. You sort of think it starts the season, December the 1st. We've never changed the date, but we're sure there would be some people there, but we have certainly discouraged people there. We can't have that. So we're turning our lights on, and we've been working frantically the last month, before it gets really cold and while we can work outside. We do a lot of the work ourselves. Our volunteers, who are fabulous and very engaged, we're outside putting lights in all the small trees and some of our displays. We have a commercial display company who comes in and does the large displays, like our wreath and our Santa and our buildings in the park. Dominion Gardens Park is our focus park with the most of that, but we do have a Tree of Hope, which is a focus of Light Up the Hills. We've had that planted since '08. There's one in Georgetown, Ben Williams, and Acton. So they'll have their lights on, and they always have a little event with some people like we do and give away some chocolate and cookies, and that will be postponed this year again. But all of us are very excited to be able to have this event to showcase our community and the community spirit we have. And without our volunteers, who are just awesome, we wouldn't have this event. So we're very grateful for them. We do a great deal of work in fundraising because the money to pay for the commercial displays and the rent and the insurance and the advertising, it's all a not-for-profit volunteer group. So we've been working hard on that, and we've almost reached our goal. This year, I thought it would be very challenging as the fundraising coordinator for the corporate donations, but the community has been very, very generous and welcome this year.
They are not able to fundraise for this event the way they normally would. To support the event, please visit lightupthehills.com, where you can find all the details and can donate or buy draw tickets for awesome prizes. Those prizes are listed on the website as well. Let's take a look now at our local weather forecast. After only reaching a high of 2 degrees above zero today, tomorrow's high of 12 will be a welcome change with mainly sunny skies, and Friday will only be 1 degree cooler than that, again with sunshine to enjoy before a cloudy and rainy weekend. Cloudy skies Saturday with a 60% chance of rainfall in the evening, and then plan for periods of rain all day Sunday and a 70% chance of that continuing through Monday as well. And now we'll look at how some of Halton's top companies performed on the markets today. Still ahead, we'll take you downtown Oakville and to see how their streetscape is shaping up. We'll be right back. Oakville's downtown streetscape and reconstruction project is almost complete. Before the official ribbon cutting this Friday, project liaison Mary Valley joins Mayor Burton on Oakville Matters. She highlights her favorite feature of the project, the wider pedestrian-friendly sidewalks, just in time for Christmas shopping.
And I would say that the best new feature are the wider sidewalks. It allows businesses to be able to utilize the space in front of their stores or services. And that was exhibited well with our patio program, which continues on. A lot of communities had to utilize more parking spaces than what we did, or had to barricade off from a main street. But Oakville was able to secure that and roll out a patio program in our downtown that was quite successful. And as I say, today is the 17th of November, and there are still patios out there. Secondly, too, there is a open, relaxed feel about the wider sidewalks where people are able to stroll and walk 3 or 4 abreast on the sidewalk. And I don't have to tell you the importance of that now in a COVID environment. How we can walk within our downtown and be in a group of 2 or 3 people and not have to be in single file.
You can learn about all the features and challenges that went into Oakville's new downtown streetscape on Oakville Matters tonight. That's at 7:30 right here on your TV. Taking a look now at some upcoming events, you should know that Santa is now offering socially distanced porch visits in Milton, so your kids can still get their 2020 Santa photo this year right on your front porch. For $25, Santa will visit your front porch. You'll get a digital picture of him with your kids. He'll also collect their Christmas wish list and letters, and there'll be candy canes too. $5 from your purchase will go to support Halton Women's Place. For more information or to register, visit santasafe20.wixsite.com/safesanta. Oakville youth are invited to participate in the Peace Week Forum, 5:30 to 8 o'clock this Saturday, November 21st. Thank you for being with us here on Halton News. We will be back tomorrow night live at 5. For Halton News, I'm Jessica Kading.